we'd like to discuss what Todd does. And Todd, just for example, define what you call a sales culture.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me on the show today, Dave, Paul. I appreciate it. Your comment about having a very different bend, makes me smile, because I really have tried to set aside what I do in terms of making great sales organizations from traditional sales training. And I call this building a great sales culture. There are essentially two sorts of organizations. This is what I've really come to notice, especially in this economic downturn that we've been experiencing. And Dave, I was listening to your comments carefully about job creation and whatnot. And there are two sorts of companies, right? There are those that are sort of consistently mediocre, and they're wondering, why am I not making my numbers year in and year out? Or they're just at 100%, or they're just making their numbers. They're just eking over, eking under, and it's not good enough. And people are running around the company going, why, what's going on? And everybody goes like this, right? It's one of these. I'm going to point to somebody else. And invariably that blame falls on the shoulders of the sales organization. And that to me is just criminal. And what I've also seen are companies that are not only doing well, but they're just blowing their numbers out. Results are wonderful. And these are organizations that I believe have what I refer to as a strong sales culture. In short, everybody is in sales. They have created an organization where everybody understands that they have a direct line of sight to revenue. And this is what I do when I teach my workshops, is I show people, regardless of what role you're in, HR, finance, it doesn't matter. Everybody has a line of sight to revenue, and therefore you have a strong sales culture.
So Todd, what you're doing is really emulating great companies? Or is this something that is from your own ethos, that you created yourself, or through your own experience and so forth, or is it a combination of the two?
Well,
three.
Humility requires me to say it's a combination of all of them, certainly. I've had the great luck and the privilege to work for a number of companies in my career, ranging from my first job at Xerox, and when I got out of school many years ago, and a couple of dot-coms, and back to big companies in my own company. And really, I've studied these companies and other companies and really tried to understand why, as I said a moment ago, some do better than others. This idea of sales culture is something that I've truly pioneered in terms of how I get companies and motivate companies to understand that you can do better, you can do much better, if you encourage people to understand that sales is not a five-letter word. We all do it.
Right. It's all part of it. Is it, with that, do you bring everybody into the sales workshop? So business shuts down, we have a sales workshop, or do you even call it a sales workshop? Because obviously you talk to the HR department or even the design department, they're not going to want to come in and sell, but you're really more teaching and branding, right?
Well, in a sense, yes. So to your first point of your question, no, we don't necessarily shut the whole company down. What we do offer, though, are what I refer to as my sales culture workshops, and they are designed to be a mix of everybody in the organization. So it's very common for me to have HR, finance, legal, sales president, the receptionist, whomever, in those workshops. And we show them through a series of case studies that we build throughout anywhere from a 4-hour to a 3-day experience, that what you do day in and day out is in fact selling, right? So what we show is, and what we encourage people to understand is, don't do anything different. Think very differently about what you're doing. So we don't shut the company down. We don't stop. We don't turn the lights out, for any particular period of time. We do it typically in segments, and it has proven to be extremely effective. And I should also point out that, I do a lot of speaking to HR groups and finance groups, and what I refer to as the non-traditional sales groups. And the reality of it is, in today's world, people understand that for job security, you want to have a line of sight to revenue. You don't want to be the person with the bullseye on your back,
right,
who's identified as a non-revenue producing person.
Overhead, yeah.
Overhead, exactly, when that next round of, unfortunately, layoffs may or may not occur. And as we're coming out of this financial boom, this financial downturn, meltdown, whatever you want to call it, I personally, if I were working for an organization, I personally would want to be somebody who gets how what I do, whether it's direct sales or not, plays a role ultimately in a customer deciding to make a decision for my company. And that's what we show. Todd,
could you give us an example, a real-life company? Don't mention names or anything, but just an example of, what you saw when you were engaged and what transpired and
Sure.
what happened, what looked afterwards.
Sure. Thanks for thanks for asking that question. I work with a number of clients, and one client in particular and really they all fall into the same pattern. It's sort of that why are we mediocre, as I mentioned, a moment ago. In this particular company I'm thinking of, and it's a fairly large company, based on the East Coast here. And when I got there, what was going on was everybody was sitting in their silo, if you will. This is my job, leave me alone. My paycheck comes every 2 weeks. Sales isn't my issue. Oh, we're not making our numbers? Call the sales department. So what happens is everybody is, again, going like this, and nobody's really understanding that what they do has a role or has a part in that sales process, directly or indirectly. And when we identified those silos, when we really truly identified the people who were saying, I know I'm sitting here, but I'd like to be able to do more. I'd like to understand how what I do affects the bottom line. They became my target audience. They became the first people that we put through the workshops. When we pulled people out of their silos and we mixed them up, and we showed them through these case studies and workshops that exactly what they're doing day in and day out has a direct effect, that begins to spread throughout the company. Now, as my best friend says to me, we ain't selling easy here. This takes time. Culture change doesn't happen overnight. Building a sales culture doesn't happen overnight. People, however, want to be engaged. I speak with more HR people who want to be in the business than not.
How do you think these companies come to this lack of sales culture? Because as a business is growing, clearly the owner or the entrepreneur or the core group are out selling everything, right? Mm-hmm. They're trying to raise money, they're trying to get their product or service known. Is it because people become lethargic? It's because it becomes bureaucratic? Or is there a number of reasons why we have a non-sales culture?
Non-sales culture. There's a book there, I believe.
It sounds like
I think there's a book
like
to be. I think there's a book to be had there. It's probably be my second book. Organizations realize this a couple of different ways. They wake up and say, okay, this has been years and years of not making our numbers. We have to do something different. Or somebody has to hit them alongside the head and say, you've got to do something different. What I find is that companies too often follow the rule of insanity. Let's do the same thing over and over and over again, and maybe something different will happen this year. If Einstein could have monetized that, he would have been I'm sure, wealthier than he was. So organizations, thankfully, are waking up either through direct intervention or observing other organizations, especially competitors, as to why they're doing well, and they're asking those questions. What am I doing wrong, or what am I not doing? It's a philosophical question.
Right.
Fortunately, occasionally, I get called in, and we begin that conversation about, well, is everybody in your organization engaged in sales? Do they understand the role they play? Or are you spending your time toying with the sales team, the comp plans, the quotas, the goals, the budgets, pointing the finger at them and wondering why, and nothing's changing?
Right.
So it's serendipitous, it's intentional, it happens by observation. Smart people get there, and they know something has to change.
It seems to me, the stereotype I have of a salesperson or doing the sales process is, okay, I call on you, and I'm going to shake you and make you buy from me, and I need
Right.
that. I want that closed right now.
Right.
Seems like what you're talking about is a much more subtle process.
It is.
So you're not beating up on a potential customer, but just
It is.
spreading the word that, hey, this is what I do, my company's good, to keep us in mind.
Yeah, that's a great point. There will always be the perception of what selling is. Sales to some people will always be a 5-letter word. Sell will always be a 4-letter word to certain people. However, the economic realities, again, of where we are have really changed people's core belief that, we all do something. So what I do in my courses, in my sales culture workshops, and in my consulting work is I'm very careful to explain to people that we're all business professionals first. When you understand that your role as a business professional is what comes out in your conversations and your connections with people internally and externally, well, by the way, that's selling. Hold on to your hat. You've now engaged in the selling process. But you're taking a much more intelligent approach to what you do. Yes, Paul, there will always be the salespeople out there who will leap across the table and go for the jugular and shake you till you buy.
The used car salesman.
The used car salesman. Right. And I know some used car salespeople and car salespeople who are wonderful business professionals. Mm-hmm. And I know great services salespeople who are horrific sales reps. Okay? It goes both ways. Right. The reality of it is the profession of sales, and in one of my courses I draw the distinction between sales reps and sales professionals. The world of the sales professional is burgeoning. It's growing. It requires you to be a business professional. That's one of the things that we teach as well.
Mm-hmm. When you're talking about changing a culture, and you talked a lot about interacting with HR and human resources, don't you really need the buy-in from top management, owners, CEOs, CFOs, board directors, whomever?
Absolutely.
Don't they need to go through the sales culture, if you will, to make it successful? Because I've seen many programs with companies, they're excited when they start, and then they lose speed as soon as, the check clears, I guess.
Well,
that's the case.
Right? You bring up a great point and ask a great question. So two answers. First of all of the clients that I have and the work that I do in helping organizations build that sales culture, I only do it when it starts with the top echelon of the company. Every client I have, I report to, if you will, the president, the CEO, the founder, whomever it might be. And the other trick to making this truly come alive and truly work is coaching after the fact. Mm. You see, most sales training does the following. They train a sales team like this, and they neglect the rest of the organization. And that, to me, is just a crime. Okay? Right. What I do is I go this way, and we anoint and train and empower coaches to keep the sales culture principles alive. Again, we're not teaching people to stop doing what they're doing and go start to sell. We're teaching people that what they're doing now is in fact selling. Don't do anything different. Think differently about what you're doing. And all of a sudden, you'll see how you have that line of sight to revenue. So it starts with the president, it moves down, and absolutely it stays alive by coaching and by instilling in people not to do anything different. That's where traditional sales training fails.
Todd, I noticed in your biography that you're an author. Could you explain how did that come about?
By accident, actually. Part of my job in my company, I'm the sole person in my company. I'm also a keynote speaker, and certainly I knew that I wanted to write a book on sales culture. So about a year ago, I published a book called Never Sell Alone, which is really what sales culture is the idea that we're not selling alone. We're building the virtual team. We're leveraging the relationships, that sort of thing. I did publish my book last July, and I'll have a second book coming out.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'll have a second book coming out probably this year, and a reprint of Never Sell Alone, updated version called Everyone's in Sales. Mm-hmm.
So where could our viewers see that, get that book?
Right now it's exclusively on my website, which is toddcohen.com.
Okay. Very good.
Congratulations on the book.
Thank you. It is truly an experience to write a book.
Mm-hmm. And publish it.
and publish, yes. Yes, and get it out there.
Yeah. Yes. Well, it's, again, it keeps going how interesting companies are that they let themselves get lethargic or let themselves get, mediocre, if you will. Strive for mediocrity. Who does that, right? And it's great that you have, obviously a plan, if you will, or a process that people can utilize and help them get out of that and shake off of it. Really fantastic.
Thank you.
Terrific. Yep. Todd, it's been a real pleasure having you this program.
Thank you.
And just want to remind the audience that your money matters. Thank you very much.
Next week's guest.
Oh, next week's guest is Eric Suttle of Bernstein Global Wealth Management. Bernstein is very well known for its research capabilities and wealth management capabilities. So look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks again.
Thanks.
Good job.